And now, aviation weather around Alaska. Hi, I'm Meteorologist Peter Chan with the National Weather Service, and here is your aviation weather outlook for Alaska here as we go into the mid and latter part of this week. On this Wednesday morning, we've been watching a weak area of low pressure in the western Gulf and other low circulation in the central Bering. There is a thermal trough across the interior where scattered showers, thunderstorms will continue to develop this Wednesday afternoon and evening. And as we go into tomorrow and Friday, and especially later this week, a stronger area of low pressure will lift out of the North Pacific into the Gulf, and that'll have gale force winds wrapped around it, along with some moderate to heavier rains along areas of the Gulf Coast into the Panhandle. As a heads up to you having any flight plans, especially as we get into Saturday. But in the meantime, Thursday morning, there could be an isolated thunderstorm across the interior, IFR in the central Yukon River Valley. We also have IFR conditions along areas of the Gulf Coast, Kenai, Lower Cook Inlet, back into the southern Panhandle, as well as areas around Chilkoot and White Passes. And then along the Arctic coast and out over the central Bering down through especially the central Aleutians. Thursday afternoon, look for scattered showers and some thunderstorms redeveloping all the way from southwest slopes of the Brooks Range and east of Kotzebue Sound down through the central Yukon Valley back toward the 40-mile Gold Country. IFR conditions and pockets there across parts of the Panhandle, outer west central coast and northern Panhandle, on up toward the northern Gulf, also just off of the Arctic coast up toward Utqiagvik, and then out over areas of the Bering and across the Aleutians. Friday morning, an isolated thunderstorm could still be possible along similar routes there of the southwestern part of the Brooks Range, central Yukon Valley to down toward the 40-mile Gold Country. More widespread IFR conditions anticipated across the Panhandle, up into the Wrangell-St. Elias Mountains and perhaps the east side of the eastern Kenai, western part of Prince William Sound. Also some IFR off of the western portion of the Seward Peninsula in the vicinity of the Bering Strait, and then down through St. Matthew, St. Paul, and covering much of the Aleutians. Friday afternoon, we expect cumulus buildups with scattered showers and thunderstorms possible again across the interior along the middle upper Yukon Valley areas, the south slopes, southwestern slopes of the Brooks Range. More in the way of MVFR conditions, enough lifting of ceilings and improving of any lower visibilities there along the Gulf Coast and Panhandle. Still some IFR central Bering down through especially the central western Aleutians. Pass conditions on Thursday, Anaktuvik Pass, generally VFR conditions, though there could be some cumulus buildups, and as you fly south of the south entrance, you may encounter some scattered showers and storms. Same thing, Atigan Pass, generally VFR conditions, but cumulus buildups and perhaps scattered shower, even an isolated storm, especially south of the south entrance. Lake Clark and Merrill starting out with IFR conditions Thursday morning, lifting to MVFR as we go through the late morning and afternoon. Rainy Pass, generally MVFR conditions expected throughout the day, as will be the case at Windy Pass. Further east, Isabel Pass may become VFR by midday. And as we head out toward Mentasta Pass, MVFR becoming VFR, though MVFR conditions should continue across much of the Copper River Basin during the day. Thursday, Tanita Pass should generally see MVFR conditions, and then further south and west. Portage Pass starting out IFR, especially over the eastern half of the pass into Prince William Sound early in the day, giving way to MVFR conditions along the pass length. And then in the far northern Panhandle, we expect IFR conditions there on Thursday at both Chilkoot and White Passes. Freezing levels aloft are highest in the far northern area of the state, along the central Brooks Range and North Slope at or above 12,000 feet. This is where some of the warmest air will be residing. Coolest air aloft. We have a pocket of cooler air aloft over the central Bering associated with an area of low pressure. Also a pocket there of near 6,000 foot freezing levels aloft just southeast of the Alaska Peninsula. Greatest threat for any icing will be associated with this low over the central Bering and a trough out extending south of it. Generally, there could be some moderate icing there in the areas around the central Aleutians above 8,000 feet, especially there northward into the lower Bering Sea. And then area of isolated moderate icing possible here across areas of south central along and especially south of the Alaska Range to along the northern northeastern Gulf Coast and Panhandle, generally though above 12,000 feet. And winds aloft are going to be strongest south of the Gulf and back south of the Aleutians. We have some winds on the order of 90 to 100 knots, generally out of the west and then across the mainland. Southeast flow, especially strongest there. Norton Sound, the Seward Peninsula, back toward the Gulf of Anadyr, 60 to 65 knot winds. 700 millibars, 9,000 feet. We have winds aloft from the southeast around 35 knots. Kotzebue Sound, lower Chukchi Sea. Another area of a little stronger winds south of Haida Gwaii. There's southwest winds of 45 knots. And then at 3,000 feet, some of the strongest winds are located along the northwestern Arctic coast, 30 to 40 knots out over the Chukchi Sea, upwards of 30 from the southeast of 30 to 40 knots. And the greatest threat for turbulence then during the day on Thursday will be over areas of the west and northwest coast. The western Brooks Range, especially southwest of Wainwright, down to around Point Hope, Cape Lisburne, all the way down toward Kivalina. There could be some moderate turbulence, as well as across western portions of the Seward Peninsula, especially west of Shishmaref down through Teller, Wales, and just to the northwest there of Nome. And we expect that turbulence surface to 4,000 feet.